All right, so first question, what motivated you to study so hard for the SAT and ACT?
Uh, well, I first started studying at Excel Academy, I think, when I was a sophomore, I think. And I did it rather voluntarily because I knew SAT and ACT tests were very crucial in going into good colleges. So it's just like a pathway for me, getting good SAT, ACT scores, keeping like a GPA would help me get into a college where I'd have a nice environment to study the things I want to study, and that would lead me to get a good career and just a happy life in general, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to look at it. You know, it really is more of a pathway, a means to an end, right? Your SAT and ACT scores are not everything, but they're definitely, part of the building block.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of, jumping off of what you just said, you're talking about your goals, and you have a lot of them. So what currently motivates you to achieve these goals?
Well, my ultimate goal in life, career wise, is to become a pediatric psychologist because I like working with children, and I have I've always had a passion for helping other people, and I thought it was combining my passion and my interest into one. I had an interest in psychology and how people think, and so I just combined both of them, and I wanted to become a pediatric psychologist, and I also have some personal experiences along with that. So because I have a set goal, I think that motivates me to do what I can at this moment. And right now I'm a student, so I think my job is to study, and by performing that job well, that will lead me to my goal later in life.
Right. And so, do you think that it'd be helpful for other students to also see the SAT or the ACT in the same way? More of something that will get you to your larger goal?
I think all students should find their own reason to take the SAT or ACT, not necessarily because their parents force you to study for them, but something more that he or she voluntarily decides to study for, because that is an important factor in when you're actually studying, because when you're forced by someone to do it, you're more likely to just take it as just homework and something insignificant that just wastes your time. But if you actually have the motive and the desire to study, and if it's like a set goal that you're going for, that helps you in the process of studying. But I feel I don't want to force my view on any other student, but I feel like they should all find their reason to study.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense. Having an internal drive, an internal motivation to kind of get you, above good into the great kind of score area. All right. So I think that was an amazing tip in a way. Do you have any others?
Starting early would be one of the tips that I'd want to share, because when you start your junior year, you only have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of times that you can take the test, really. So I started my sophomore year, so I didn't have to study very intensively from the beginning, but familiarizing yourself with the content of the test is one of the most important things to do, and that's not something that can be achieved in like a week-long boot camp or something. So starting early, familiarize yourself with the different types of questions and answers, and yeah.
So, I think that's great. And you mentioned that you started coming to Excel Academy from your sophomore year.
I think so. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. So do you think that coming to to Excel Academy has, helped achieve your goals, your SAT goals? And if so, how?
Definitely, because one of the main things I think students struggle with when they're studying for SAT and ACT are the question as to what resources that they can use, because they're online, but really you don't know which ones are the good resources, and you don't really have a sense of direction and where how to approach the problem types. But at Excel, the teachers give you tips on based from their own experiences of teaching SAT and ACT on tips on how to tackle certain question types, and also the abundance of resources that Excel Academy provided was one of the major factors, I think, in getting a perfect score.
All right, awesome. So I just wanted to also ask you a few non-SAT or ACT related questions. So I think what a lot of people were curious about is, do you read? Do you like to read outside of what you have to for school?
I enjoy reading. I've always enjoyed reading from when I was young, but I don't necessarily read like English books. I enjoy reading Korean books as well, but and there's not much time really in high school to read that much, but I enjoy reading because I get to have a lot of secondhand experiences that otherwise I wouldn't have. So I think reading just broadens your perspective.
Right, so you mentioned Korean books. Do you have any favorite author, any type of genre? What's your favorite?
I don't necessarily have like a favorite author. Genre-wise, I think fantasy is my favorite. I know some Korean parents don't really approve of like too fictional
Right,
works,
yeah.
but I like fantasy because I get the feeling of I get to be someone else and somewhere else that I'm not right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just tying back into this secondhand experience, and it relates to my goal as like a psychologist, because when I act or think like that person or try to analyze the character's actions, I get to really understand the character in a three-dimensional way.
Right. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I was the same. My dad would always yell at me and be like, you need to read nonfiction books and autobiographies, but it's still extremely beneficial to just read anything, get your hands on anything. So, all right. Can I ask what colleges you're applying to? Or what colleges you're interested in?
So this year I applied to USC for a program that allowed me to like go skip senior year and go if I got accepted. And like last week I did get the news that I was accepted, but
Congrats.
thank you. I was actually deciding with my family. We said that I'd go if I get like a half tuition or full like scholarship, but I got like a quarter scholarship, which is still good, but I don't want to throw away of my chances of applying to some of my other dream colleges that I have, such as U of Chicago, Yale University. I'm looking a lot into some of the Ivy Leagues, not necessarily because of their prestige, but for example, U of Chicago is known for their intellectual environment, and I feel like I would really like that in a college setting. And I plan to stay in my university until I get my PhD and everything. So I think the college that I go to and like the people that I meet there are going to be very important later on in my life. So I want to decide my college wisely.
That's so interesting. So you plan to stay at your undergrad to finish your PhD as well?
Probably. Well, it depends on what college I go into, but
that'd be ideal.
Yeah, that'd be ideal.
Yeah, definitely. Life of the mind at U Chicago is a big thing. I don't know if we're gonna use this in the interview, but like at parties, people will talk about philosophy.
I saw that when I was looking at some like surfing on the web.
Definitely a very intellectual space. The professors, there are so esteemed, so intelligent. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend UChicago, I think. Yeah.
Because that's not what I can get really in this kind of setting. If I try to
Very
talk to
different.
someone about like philosophy,
Yeah,
it's like
it's very different. Do you like philosophy as well?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think you'd like UChicago again.
Mind provoking.
So, do you have any? So, are you doing any extracurricular activities at school? And if so, what are they?
I do. I don't necessarily do like sports and musical like instruments really. I do archery outside of school, but a lot of my time outside of school is devoted to volunteering. I have, I think, around like 400 or 500 hours of volunteering so far in my high school years, and most of them are related to my career goals. I volunteer at Sports Social as like a teacher's aide, and they have like a group class of around like 5 or 6 kids with autism usually, and then I just help out the teacher in doing like sports and art activities. And at school, I'm a member of Best Buddies, which is an organization that works for inclusion of every individual with intellectual and developmental disorders, and I'm an officer in that club. I'm also a yearbook editor because I like designing graphics and writing stories about other people. And I'm part of like National English Honor Society. I have a few officer positions, and yeah, I'm sort of active.
Yeah, you stay busy, which is great.
Yeah.
So you mentioned archery. Do you have any other non-school related hobbies?
I'm more of like an indoors person than an outdoors person. When I have the time, I like reading. I just like reading. I enjoy reading fantasy books, as I mentioned. Sometimes I like reading poetry, and I think that also led me to like writing as a hobby. So I write a lot. I don't necessarily intend to make them public that much. I've entered a few contests. I got published in like a small like online magazine.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I just like writing because that helps me express my thoughts and emotions in a very personal way. And just listening to music, and for games, I like playing like logic games like Sudoku and logic puzzles.
Nice. Well, that's all the questions and a little bit more that I had. Is there anything like you want to say? You know, anything I can like ask you a question you can answer, or you can just say it.
Well, I think I mentioned this in the previous interview I had with with the Las Vegas Review Journal, and I said to earn the 2 perfect scores, I think the 3 factors that was the most important was mental strength, like mentality, and then dedication and luck. And I just want all students who are working for their SAT and ACT scores to realize that those 3 really are important. You have to have the dedication to continue studying and the mentality to do it with an internal drive, like you said, not because you've been forced by any external factors. And then luck is really important as well. So I don't want people to be like too stressed out about it. Sometimes your luck comes in various forms. So